and they've taken over the government to such a degree that when she tried to enforce the law, she couldn't do it. They've put in a Attorney General, Holder, who refuses to prosecute campaign contributors, refuses to prosecute Wall Street. And I just got back from the 11th Post-Keynesian meeting in Kansas City, and also the American Monetary Institute meeting in Chicago. Everybody is talking about now, the rumors are all out about Tim Geithner's role in all of this. When the Obama administration took over, Geithner planned to leave his role as head of the New York Federal Reserve, where he supervised a vast giveaway of wealth to Wall Street at public expense. His plan was to follow Robert Rubin to Citibank and become the head for a salary of about $20 million a year. But the bankers got together and said, Tim, we need you in Treasury. We need a very sophisticated, smooth crook like you to bail us out and to give us billions and billions of dollars, trillions of dollars. You're the only guy who can do it. Stay in, move into Secretary of the Treasury. When you step down, what the Japanese called descent from heaven, we'll take care of you then. You'll get the big payoff. You'll be a big millionaire. You'll be a player. Just do the looting for us as our inside man, and we'll do it. And Geithner said, there's one thing that I want. You have to make sure that Elizabeth Warren is out. I don't want her on. I want complete control. So there's no law enforcement. There's no anti-crime enforcement. There's no truth in lending. If we're going to steal, we have to do it right. I'm paraphrasing the discussion. It's almost like the old Hollywood movies of the 1930s. When the mafia would come to a town, they'd put one of their guys as district attorney so that he wouldn't prosecute them. Ever since Alan Greenspan was put at head of the Federal Reserve, they put a deregulator in charge who wouldn't prosecute.
All right, let me jump in for a second. You mentioned Alan Greenspan, and of course he got rid of Brooksley Born over at the CFTC. Now you're saying that Sheila Bair at FDIC, she was basically forced to walk the plank, and Geithner's behind it all, the Machiavellian master, and the result is a criminogenic criminal enterprise. And watch Geithner, he leaves. Where he goes? Well, of course he's going to go to Wall Street somewhere to make a killing on all of his contacts in insider trading. But the economic theory that is used to justify this crime spree comes under two headings. There's the trickle-down economics, there's Milton Friedman monetarism, or there's Keynesian deficit spending. But they've tried both of those. You've got record deficit spending and record monetary stimulus, but the economy is still contracting. Why is that? Is it just because the criminals have completely taken over and we shouldn't look at any economic theory anymore, Dr. Michael Hudson, because it's not about economics anymore, it's about rape and pillage?
Well, you're quite right, Max. This is what makes the Wall Street financial oligarchy different from the mobsters in the 1930s movies. Wall Street does something that the mob couldn't do. They've taken over the educational system and the government's statistical system to depict what they're doing as wealth creation. And the deficit that you've just mentioned hasn't been the kind of deficits that you had in the 1930s or after World War II. They're not deficits of government spending in the real economy to employ labor, to build roads, to build infrastructure, or even to build armaments. These deficits are very different. These deficits are money dropped from the helicopter on Wall Street. They call the head of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke, Helicopter Ben Bernanke, because he said, I'm going to drop money on the economy. But Ben Bernanke's helicopter only flies over Wall Street. It doesn't fly over the rest of the economy. It only drops money on Wall Street and on the banks. The big guys are the bondholders. And what Sheila Bair said, when it comes down to it, people talk about bailing out the economy, but she said it's all about the bondholders. And her book is sort of an expose in this. And again, this is written by a conservative Midwestern Republican, not by a radical. And it's the old-fashioned Republicans that don't exist in the Republican Party anymore that are coming out with righteous indignation. saying what's happening is wrong, it's predatory, and the system cannot be fixed without sending a whole lot of people to jail.
All right, now let me ask you this question about Ben Bernanke, and he came out with his quantitative easing to infinity. They're going to buy mortgage-backed securities, billions of dollars every month forever. Dr. Michael Hudson, why can't he just retire the mortgages themselves?
If he retired the mortgages, that would help the mortgage owers, the homeowners, but that's not his constituency. He wants to essentially pump money into the banks by taking $29 trillion worth of junk mortgages onto the government's balance sheets, giving in exchange commercial bank deposits at the Fed and government IOUs. And then he takes these, having bought these at face value, 100% value instead of 10% value, he then sells them at a very, very low price, at 10 cents on the dollar, and now the banks that have already got 100% value for these mortgages can buy it back from the government at 10 cents on the dollar and make another $29 trillion.
So let me ask you a question. You wrote in your latest piece, so instead of financing industry, U.S. banks don't lend against what may be produced in the future. They make loans against collateral already in place, including entire companies. Now, you wrote a long piece, an excellent piece, talking about the financialization of the global markets. This seems to be the nettle of that piece right here, this question of collateral, and you're contrasting today's environment with the old days where collateral actually meant something. But talk a little bit about that.
Well, that's what makes the bubble economy different from what's described in the textbooks. If you look at the textbooks that students are taught, you have a picture of a factory with smokestacks and workers with lunch pails walking in and out, and the factory producing goods and services that the workers buy. But that's not what banks make loans for. They don't make loans to build factories or to build anything. They make loans only against collateral that's already in place. Real estate that's already there, oil and gas reserves, or they'll lend to corporate raiders to take over a company that's in place. And the corporate raider doesn't build up the company and hire more labor with lunch pails. It downsizes the labor. It cuts costs. It grabs the pension funds and says, we're going to go bankrupt if you don't renegotiate your pensions from defined benefit, where you know what you're going to be getting, to defined contribution plans where all you know is what you pay in.
Okay, let me jump in.
Let me negotiate it. We're going to go bankrupt and wipe out your pension altogether. So what you have is the banks becoming part of a predatory shrinking process.
Let me jump in for a second, because a comment was made this week from a private equity investor saying we can get money from the banks to buy companies, but we can't get loans from the bank to service the companies that we bought. In other words, the companies that they bought are companies that need money to continue in operations. They can't get those loans. But to your point, they can get loans to take over companies using the assets of the acquired company as the collateral. That's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yes. The bank credit is only available for looting. It's not available to maintain industry. It's part of the neoliberal plan that was brought in by Reagan and Thatcher in the 1980s. Credit's available only for extracting money from the economy quickly, only for emptying out the economy and shrinking it until the United States ends up looking like Greece or Ireland or Latvia or Iceland. So as soon as the election's over, we're going to see the result of just an internal economic collapse. Everybody's bailing out.
All right. Finally, you say that in Europe we are seeing an oligarchic counter-revolution against democracy. Explain that.
Angela Merkel explained last year that when the Greeks are going to have a referendum on do they want to impose austerity, to pay taxes, to bail out the bankers, she said the problem with austerity is they're going to vote against bailing out the bankers. We cannot afford democracy. So she said we have to put in a technocrat. A technocrat is a euphemism for a bank lobbyist, like Tim Geithner is a technocrat. And so they said, we at the European Central Bank are going to appoint a technocratic ruler, what the Romans called a proconsul, to act on behalf of the banks. You cannot vote. That's what central bank independence is. The government policy in your country, in Greece and Spain and Portugal, is going to be controlled by the bankers. The bankers are independent of the political process, and we at the European Central Bank are telling them what to do by what's called conditionalities. In other words, we set the conditions on which we will be willing to bail out your bank so that your bank can pay us